Hello everybody, so here is Black Angel again, and I'm here with a video in the category sexual identity. Again, I'm talking about BDSM, and the title is Saying No as a Submissive. The reason why I decided to talk about this topic is that I've recently been facing some of those issues personally, and on the other hand, someone asked me where my BDSM videos are, and since I did want to make another one or another couple of videos about this topic, I decided that this specific one deserves a space. So here is another BDSM video. Saying no as a submissive. So as a submissive, you're faced with a problem. And your problem here is saying no. So being a submissive is, by definition, putting yourself in the position of letting others basically decide for you in some ways. Still, it takes a lot of responsibility to put yourself in that position. We're talking about consent. When we're talking about BDSM, whatever you may be, that you are a submissive, that you're a slave, that you are a switch, whatever you may be, you are consenting to something. And when you are consenting to something, you have to be extremely aware of what you're consenting to. So when it comes to saying no as a submissive, and especially as a slave, actually, it is mostly about making sure and figuring out what your hard limits are and what your limits are, and bring them to the attention of the dominant in question. If your dominant is not willing to listen to your hard limits or to respect your hard limits, that's not the dominant you're looking for. They're probably right for someone else, but they're not right for you. For example, if you have an allergy and you cannot wash dishes with your hands, with your bare hands, and you need a dishwasher, and your dominant is not willing to let you buy a dishwasher, that's not the dominant you're looking for. Hard limits can actually be also psychologic in nature. For example, if you are a person that requires a certain amount of freedom in their personal interests, and the dome in question is not willing to allow you that freedom, then you're gonna be doomed to live a very sad and a very unhappy life as a submissive if you stick to that dominant. This is why when you go around the net and you start talking to submissives that have a lot of experience in the scene and that have been submissive for a very, very long time, especially to slaves, the first thing that you're told is to pay attention to red flags. Now, what they're talking about is actually splitting those people that are actually abusive individuals from actual dominants or masters. What I'm talking about here, though, is something slightly different, because aside from taking care that you're not stumbling into someone abusive, you also need to pay attention to what are red flags for you personally. How do you recognize your hard limits? How do you define how to say no, or when to tell to speak your word, your safe word, in a 24/7 relationship in everyday life matters? Here's how. When you are trying to submit, or you are submitting to your dominant, or you're being trained to be submitted, what happens is that more often than not, no matter how submissive you are, part of you is going to fight that. So there's going to be part of you that doesn't want to do that thing. So in that specific case, what I have seen happening out there is that a lot of people try to silence that voice. That's the wrong thing to do. What you need to do when you feel like you're fighting against submitting and something really doesn't want to submit, and you're struggling with submission, what you need to do is face what the problem is. Sometimes you're going to realize that it's actually some sort of part of you that doesn't want your happiness. And that's when you're actually going to need to find a way to truly silence that voice once and for all. Not just push it at the back of your mind. Anything you push at the back of your mind is going to surface later on. So you face issues. If you want to be a submissive and you want to be a slave and you want to be in a 24/7 relationship, you have to face your issues. You have no way out. This is probably the one environment, the one field where you cannot do any other way. And if you go out there, you will hear this very same thing from a lot of people. So how do you handle that? Sometimes you're going to figure out that that thing is something that you really don't want to do because it is a psychological hard limit of yours. I'm thinking, for example, some sexual practices that you may not be inclined to experience. So if you do not tell your dominant, your master, that those specific practices are not something that you enjoy or something that you can handle, you're going to doom your relationship to unhappiness and failure. So you're not dooming just yourself, you're dooming your master, your dominant, and you're dooming the entire relationship. The worst thing of all, though, is that you're dooming yourself to unhappiness. And you are doing yourself a big disservice. You are consenting to something that you're not truly consenting to. So you are basically lying in the relationship. And that's the worst thing that you can do in a relationship, lying. So if there is that one thing that is a hard limit for you, you have to share it with your dominant. You have to be able to see your dominant as some sort of an equal in a lot of ways. Obviously, they're going to be the dominant and you're going to be the submissive, and that's not going to change. He's going to be the owner, you're going to be the property, he's going to be the master, you're going to be the slave. That doesn't change. What changes is the attitude that you have in front of this person. You can worship your master, you can worship your owner, you can worship your dominant. That's also a practice. You can consider them a teacher. But until you consider them an equal, you're not going to be able to actually communicate with them and enjoy the relationship as it deserves to be enjoyed. This is also why I strongly recommend staying away from online dominant trainers, so-called online dominant trainers. These are dominants for the most part, and truly dominant as far as I've seen, that offer you some training in submitting. That's not going to be very helpful. Every dominant has specific and different needs. So you cannot just train to be someone's dominant and then become someone else's dominant. Being a white slate, a clean slate, is always the best solution. So you're going to have a lot of questions, a lot of difficulties, and a lot of things that are going on in your mind that are going to burden your mind, things that you require to ask someone. And that's exactly where the relationship of trust is built. You need to be in a position to build enough trust towards your dominant, towards your master or owner, to be able to ask them the answer to those questions. If your dominant is not able to answer your questions, he will address you somewhere, or you will do researches together according to who you are. Another couple of examples on this topic. I am a very weird kind of submissive, for example. There are things that I need to know for sure that I am not going to be asked to do. I am a slave. I consider myself a slave still, or even property in some cases. But anyway, there are things that I'm not willing to do. And one of these things is psychological in nature. I need to know that my master is going to accept me, whatever I do. For example, if I decide that something isn't right for me and that thing isn't right for me, and well, again, if I decide that something isn't right for me, I need my master to help me figure out if that's true or not. So I need someone very patient in that sense. So the last word is always his, and actually, well, yeah, I'm not going to say this. Anyway, moving on. Sorry. I was going into private territory and I don't want to go there. So anyway, I need my master to leave me some free space to figure out who the hell I am, and to accept me no matter what I do. So if I say no one time and I'm being a brat, I need my master to be patient enough to accept that I'm being a brat, and to lead me to stop being a brat, to help me stop being a brat by helping me figure out who I am, understand my needs, and figure out why I behave like that in that specific circumstance. I can take punishment personally, and I can take discipline, but talking to me is far better than trying to discipline me into something. Emotional pressure helps probably a little bit better than other things. I'm not sure yet, actually. I would need to ask for confirmation on the other side. But anyway, roughly speaking. So there are things that are going to be a hard limit for you. You have your temperament. You have your way to handle situations. So you have your specific flavor of personality. For example, I am the kind of submissive to whom you do not want to leave the house clean, because that's going to be a disaster. I need someone to micromanage me in that sense. Someone else may be a little Cinderella kind of type that knows how to handle the house and doesn't need any indication of the sort. There are submissives out there that I personally admire a lot for their personality. I do not want to be like them. I just admire them for who they are. That might be the kind of person that knows exactly when to bring the coffee to their master, even if they didn't ask for that. That's something that I highly admire in some submissives. But that also requires the right kind of master. Some masters, for example, would not like that, because they would rather tell you when they need something and what they need, in some sort of a need to actually give orders. So this is pretty much everything I want to say for now about this topic. And there's another side that I feel deserves to be treated. And it's actually a very big and very important topic. It's also about saying no as a submissive, but this time I'm talking about saying no to everybody else. Being a submissive does not mean that you have to say yes to everyone and anyone that you face and that you cross during your day or through your day. So the most difficult thing to learn as a submissive is actually to start saying no to people when you actually mean a no. And that is actually something that a lot of dominants give a lot of attention to, masters especially. 24/7 relationships normally give a lot of attention to this part of the training for the submissive. And that's because it is very important that the dominant has the exclusive about dominating the submissive. Imagine the situation in which you are told by someone outside to do one thing one way, and your master instead wants you to do that thing another way. Or your friends push you to go see that movie, and your master doesn't want you to go see that movie because it's something that would, for example, cause you some emotional distress that would put you in a very bad position. A practical example, I cannot stand specific kinds of horror movies. If I had to say yes to other people pressuring me to go see that kind of horror movie, I would be harming myself very badly. And my master, the good master for me, is the kind of person that tells me not to go there. And that requires saying no to the people that are inviting you to do that thing or pressuring you to do that thing. So in your growth as a submissive, and I would say personal growth as a submissive, you also need to face the issue of figuring out how to say no to others. So you're going to have to learn not to be submissive outside of your BDSM relationship or your 24/7 relationship. That is something very important. You are, as a submissive, you are basically the facade that represents the training your master is giving you. And if you give off the vibe that you basically obey anyone and do whatever anyone says, or you don't, you are the kind of a person that's bad training. You're giving off a bad image. You are showing people that your master has basically no control over you. And if you are deciding to give that person control over you, it must be because you trust that person. Um, so again, you need to figure out how to say no to other people. There's plenty of ways to do that. Probably at the beginning, you will find yourself being extremely hostile when you say no. That's natural. And that happens because a part of you has difficulties standing up for themselves, or actually facing others, being assertive. But being assertive is something that as a submissive, you will have to learn. You will need to learn. Obviously, unless your dominant or master says that he doesn't want that and he prefers you to obey to just random anyone's that give you orders out there, or that boss you around out there. This thing obviously does not apply to work situations and work environments. When you are at work, you have to do what is required of you according to your job and to your position. So you need to be able to split between what is actually required of you in that position and what is instead abusive towards you. So do not call out everything as abusive. Do not dismiss everything as, oh, that's the boss. I have to do that because he's the boss or she's the boss. That's not how it works. So yeah, learning to say no to others and to see your master, dominant, or owner as your equal. Those are the very important things to learn. Once again, when I say see your owner or your dominant or your master as your equal, I'm not talking about domineering them. I'm talking about recognizing that they are people, that they are flawed, and that they cannot read your mind, and they do not know what you're thinking unless you tell them. So this is what I mean with seeing the other as your equal. Obviously, there are huge differences. The first one being they're dominant and you're submissive. So this is pretty much everything I have about this topic. I hope I didn't make a mess and I was clear about this, and I will talk to you soon. Bye.